Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to really get into some fascinating source material, break it down, and make complex stuff clear for you, the learner. Think of it as, well, your shortcut to getting up to speed.
Yeah, and today we've got something really quite unique.
Oh, yeah. What is it?
It's excerpts from Pietro Ubaldi's The New Civilization of the Third Millennium. And what's really compelling, I think, is how he weaves together these, spiritual ideas with biology, sociology. It gives this very distinct angle on evolution, both for us as individuals and, well, collectively.
Okay, interesting. So our goal today isn't just a straight summary. We want to dig into how Ubaldi connects these big ideas. We'll touch on his view of a new mindset,
Uh-huh.
the biology behind society, why he values being over having,
Right.
this concept of a collective individual, historical cycles, these masculine, feminine principles he talks about, and also some potential maybe downsides, and then honesty and merit as the way forward. It's quite a range.
It definitely is. It's designed to connect dots, maybe spark a few aha moments.
Okay, let's start with that new mental framework. What's the core idea there?
So Ubaldi basically imagines this huge shift in thinking, moving away from seeing ourselves as these isolated units,
Just individuals, yeah.
right, towards understanding ourselves as like deeply woven into the fabric of the universe, almost like cells in a bigger organism, you could say, harmoniously integrated.
Okay, but I can already hear someone thinking, hold on, people are mostly just out for themselves, right? Self-interest seems pretty dominant.
And that's a fair challenge. Ubaldi addresses it directly. He'd argue that this narrow me-first focus, it's actually a kind of ignorance. It's missing the bigger reality.
Ignorance, how so?
Because, and this is the key part, he thinks this ignorance ends up hurting us. Even when we think we're acting purely selfishly, we're damaging the larger system we depend on, which ultimately harms ourselves.
Okay, so informed self-interest would actually mean understanding that connection.
Exactly, he flips it. True self-benefit comes from recognizing we're all interconnected. Acting against the whole is, in the long run, acting against yourself.
That definitely gives you pause for thought. Okay, so from that shift, he then links it to the biological roots of society.
He does. He suggests that, all these systems we create, political ideologies, economic structures, all the isms, you can trace them back
Back to what?
to our fundamental biological drives. Simple things, really. Survival, security, protecting family, the basics.
So things like debates over capital and labor, or property rights, or how we structure families, even basic laws, they all spring from those biological needs.
That's his argument. They emerge organically from these primal necessities. We're wired a certain way, and society develops mechanisms to manage those wires.
And he makes an interesting point about law itself, doesn't he?
Yeah, he says while the specific rules change over time, the underlying reason for law, its biological substance, stays pretty constant. Because those needs for order, security, they don't really change.
And he contrasts that with, what was it, public and private law.
Right. He suggests that sometimes those areas of law get built on more abstract ideas, maybe philosophical concepts or political ideals, rather than the hard reality of human biology and needs.
So the real engine driving social phenomena isn't philosophy or politics, but biology.
Yeah.
That's quite a grounded perspective.
It really is. It challenges you to look past the surface explanations and ask, what are the fundamental biological needs shaping this?
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. He talks about moving beyond just having things, possessions, to focusing on what we are, our being.
Yes, this is crucial for his vision of a new civilization. He argues we need to sort of see through the illusions of the material world, stop making such a big distinction between what looks valuable and what is valuable.
So it's about intrinsic quality.
Precisely. What really matters is who someone is deep down, their character, their abilities, not their bank account or their job title. Because only that inner being, he says, has the potential for, infinite growth and real permanence.
And that connects to finding the indestructible within us.
Yeah, exactly. Your core strengths, your knowledge, your resilience. Think about it, social standing, money, that can all vanish overnight, right?
Absolutely.
But your integrity, your skills, what you've learned, much harder to take away.
And the person who gets this, the evolved individual, as he calls them, they focus on that inner stuff.
Profoundly, yes. They prioritize cultivating that inner power, the things that can't be stolen or lost. They're not chasing fleeting external validation. And that makes them, well, incredibly resilient, especially when things get chaotic.
It makes sense. They're anchored differently.
Right. And he also reminds us that human constructs, empires, wealth, power structures, they all cycle. They rise, they inevitably fall.
But the inner stuff endures.
That's the idea. Only the eternal, the fundamental qualities that weren't made in the first place can truly last. It encourages investing in yourself, basically, in your inner development.
Okay, this next idea is really fascinating, maybe a bit complex. The collective individual. What does he mean by that?
All right, this is a big one. He describes it as this, almost like a new type of entity forming. Millions of minds starting to think in a more coordinated way, aiming for a kind of group personality, something distinct from just adding up all the individuals.
A collective personality. How does that work?
Well, he explains our own minds can operate on two levels. There's us, the individual, with our personal goals, our I. But we also function as a cell within the larger social body with collective aims, and sometimes those aims conflict. The social cell might do things the individual I wouldn't.
He uses that biological analogy, right? Society is an organism.
A very powerful one, yeah. Social classes are like tissues, ruling groups are like the brain, the masses are the body, all interconnected with communication systems, specialized functions. It's quite vivid.
And he mentions different roles within it, involuted and evolved.
Yes. The involuted, in his terms, are maybe focused on more basic functions, perhaps physical strength or more primal drives. They handle certain tasks. The evolved are more geared towards intellectual work, leadership, guidance, and administrators kind of bridge the gap.
So like different parts of the body doing different jobs.
Sort of, yeah. But he's clear this whole collective individual thing is still very early days. It's embryonic, meaning there's struggle, uncertainty, it's figuring itself out. The principle of specialization is there, but it's messy. It's trial and error, like an organism still developing in the womb.
And there's a tension, he points out, between individual and collective growth.
A key tension, yes. The individualistic path tends to favor, developing a few exceptional people, pushing boundaries.
Right, the geniuses, the innovators.
While the collectivistic path values the sheer number, the size and cohesion of the group, maybe even if the average is, well, more average.
And Ubaldi thinks both are needed.
He argues strongly that both are essential for the full picture of evolution. You need the pioneers, and you need the strong, cohesive collective. They're complementary, not mutually exclusive, even though they often seem in conflict.
Okay, that leads nicely into his idea about historical rhythms, these classic and romantic periods.
Yeah, he applies this universal law of duality, of opposites, to the flow of history. He sees these alternating cycles.
So the classic period is, what did he say, masculine?
Typically masculine, yeah. Energetic, expansive, focused on material gain, conquest. Can be destructive, breaking down old ways, but also fertilizing, creating space for the new, often violent, more materialistic, involuted in his terms.
And the romantic is the flip side.
Exactly. More feminine, calmer, conservative in the sense of preserving and building, focused on spiritual or intellectual growth, constructive, peaceful, evolved, more spiritual. It's this constant ebb and flow.
One breaks down, the other builds up.
That's a good way to put it. He sees the classic period as a necessary, almost tearing down, a clearing of the slate.
Like demolition.
Right. And then the romantic period comes in to build something new on that cleared ground. They need each other. Progress happens through their interaction, their conflict, and eventual cooperation.
And this isn't just random chance.
No, he argues it's fundamental. It reflects the underlying balance, the equilibrium the universe seeks. Every system contains these opposing forces, and they have to balance out. It's the law, with a capital L, demanding this interplay.
And leaders kind of tune into this, and the masses follow.
He suggests leaders often act as interpreters of the historical moment, implementing whichever phase is dominant, and the population as a whole embodies that impulse. And just like we need work and rest, the different parts of this collective organism also go through these cycles. It mirrors life's balance.
So history isn't a straight line. It's more like a wave or a dance.
A dynamic dance between opposing but ultimately complementary forces. That's a great way to think about it.
Okay, so building on that duality, he talks about masculine and feminine principles applying to whole peoples or nations.
Yes, drawing that same analogy from the sexes. You have peoples who are more conquering, embodying those classic masculine traits, and others who are perhaps conquered or more focused on internal development, reflecting the romantic feminine side. But again, he stresses everyone has elements of both.
And they're drawn to each other?
There's an attraction, yes, a pairing across time and space. He believes true, complete civilization comes from fusing these opposites. Neither is complete on its own.
And going too far either way is dangerous.
Definitely. A society that becomes too refined, too peaceful, maybe seen as effeminate in his terms, risks stagnation and decay.
Right.
But likewise, too much aggression, too much virile energy unchecked leads to catastrophe. The law, that balancing force, eventually steps in to correct these extremes with an opposing impulse.
Can you give an example he uses?
He points to things like ancient Rome's relationship with Greece, or the build-up to the French Revolution versus the monarchy before it, or even contrasting the 19th century with our current era. These shifts show the balancing act in progress, often revitalizing humanity after an excess.
And even when things are destroyed, the core remains.
That's his point. The superficial stuff disappears, but the essential substance, the human potential, survives and comes back in new forms, new cycles. It's ultimately hopeful, even amidst turmoil.
He also mentions the role of younger peoples.
Yes, younger, perhaps more involuted peoples, full of raw energy but maybe lacking experience or refinement, they can inject needed dynamism into older, maybe tired civilizations.
And the older ones offer.
Wisdom, experience, spiritual or intellectual depth. It's like the exchange between youth and age in a family or community. A balance.
So it's a mutual benefit.
Absolutely. The involuted learn and progress through contact with the evolved, and the evolved get a jolt of energy, a revitalization. It's this constant give and take, reciprocal exchange that he sees as a fundamental technique life uses to regenerate itself.
It really paints a picture of deep interconnectedness across cultures and time.
It does. Everyone has a part to play, something essential to offer in the grand scheme.
But you mentioned potential downsides earlier. Ubaldi does raise some warnings about this emerging collective organism, doesn't he?
He does, and they're quite important. He worries that this drive towards collective unity, the social organism, could potentially stifle individuality, become a kind of tomb for individualism, which he values as a key achievement of past progress.
So the collective could crush the individual.
That's the danger he flags. He warns against what he calls the anti-biological destruction of valuable, hard-won individual qualities just for the sake of social unification. That would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
So the goal isn't suppression.
No, not at all. It should be coordination. Finding ways to integrate individual talents and initiatives within the larger structures so they can flourish and contribute, not be stamped out.
It's about finding a balance again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He comes back to that fundamental law. The universe favors balance between these opposing principles, individual and collective. They're meant to compensate for each other, work together, not create some all-powerful state where the individual just disappears.
Okay, that makes sense. So finally, where does this deep dive take us? He talks about the law of honesty and merit.
Right. He signals a shift here. Up to now, it's been mostly observing humanity, how it functions, the cycles. Now he turns towards the path of ascent, the long climb towards what humanity could be.
And this involves fewer people.
Reaching the highest peaks, yes, that involves exceptional individuals, but the path itself relies on collective progress, which in turn depends absolutely on individual evolution.
You can't have one without the other.
Pretty much. You can design the best social system in the world, but if the people within it aren't developed enough, it won't work. You need the right human material, as he puts it.
So even fixing big social problems starts with the individual.
That's his contention. Individual and collective maturity go hand in hand. You can't leapfrog individual development.
Yeah, no.
He uses that analogy. An engineer needs good materials to build something strong. Society needs good individuals. And while the absolute pinnacles might be rare exceptions, the basic steps of human development, of building honesty and merit, are vital for everyone, for the masses, and for the collective structures we build together.
So building the individual, changing that dominant, maybe involuted mindset, that's step one for any real collective improvement.
It's a prerequisite, yes. You need that foundation.
And again, it comes back to balance, quantity and quality.
Yes, the development of the many, the masses, quantity, and the development of the exceptional few, quality. Even these extremes, he suggests, are part of the larger balance, tending towards equilibrium through their different roles and functions.
Wow. Okay. So wrapping this up, we've covered a lot of ground with Ubaldi's ideas. They're big, maybe even seem a bit out there at first.
But as he presents them, they feel strangely logical, natural, even simple in their core principles, despite the complexity. It definitely invites you to sit back and, well, think.
Yeah, it offers this really different lens for looking at society history ourselves, looking beyond just the surface noise to maybe see these deeper currents at play.
Exactly. The interconnectedness, the cycles, the biological roots, the inner versus outer value. It's a lot to process.
Right. So on that note, here's a final thought for you, our learner, to chew on. Thinking about Ubaldi's cycles, his emphasis on inner being over outer having,
Hmm.
what single individual quality do you think might be the most crucial one to cultivate right now for navigating the future with all its challenges and opportunities?
That's a good question.
Something to ponder. See how these ideas maybe resonate with what you see happening in the world. Perhaps even explore Ubaldi further. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.